Nothing like a new year to try a whole lot of new things. At the time of making this, I'm snuggled up at my desk enjoying the winter snow outside. Yeah, it snowed here. I'm genuinely surprised. It looks like a winter wonderland out there. With the coming of the new year, new things and opportunities present themselves. In that spirit, I thought I'd follow suit and give a crack at new recipes and concepts I never thought I'd try before. Let me set you up a bit and show you where we're going here. At the start of the new year, I went to Houston, Texas for a bit to enjoy some time with friends. One day, in particular, we went to a place called Central Market, and let me tell you, I almost moved to Houston right then and there. I got to see all kinds of crazy foods and ingredients. Now sure, I don't have any footage of me actually walking around, but what's more important is what I came home with. While walking around the produce section, I happened across something I've never seen before in person. Cacao pods. I was immediately on the side of grabbing one and bringing it home. I did some quick research and it turns out you can make chocolate from scratch at home, but it requires quite a bit of effort. It got me thinking then, why not make a video and share this process with you all? Chocolate has a very rich history, unsurprising I know, and I'd be doing a huge disservice if I didn't give it a try while educating myself as well. So, let's get into the kitchen and begin the long process of making delicious, nutritious, and very time-consuming chocolate. Okay, let's get a basic idea about where chocolate comes from and what it even is. Chocolate is a product of the cacao tree. Cacao is a hard-shelled fruit that is quite beautiful in its looks. On the inside are a series of seeds, all of which are covered in a sticky pulp that can be eaten and even juiced to a degree to make juice. What most people are after, though, are the seeds inside the pulp. These are what eventually become the cacao we need for chocolate. The plant is South American in origin, being native to the rainforests of the Amazon and a few other regions, although domestication brought it further up Central America. Cacao pods were often used in various ways by the peoples of the region, from being used as a foodstuff for royalty to currency for trading. You can see how such an influential crop was so important, and why it may have left its range of origin from all those years ago. Early accounts from the Spanish have even said that Aztec and Mayan civilizations in the region would grind the beans up into what was essentially a bitter liquid with spices, and they drank this as a way of refreshment. It's even said that some royalty would make this their only beverage of choice. Anyway, chocolate had a lot of properties that led to better skin quality and heart health, among other things. One distinct thing from modern times, though, was the addition of sugar to the drink. This didn't happen until the Spanish brought back cacao to Europe. The palate of the Europeans found chocolate quite bitter, and it wasn't until the actual cacao could be separated from the cacao butter and the beans did we get something similar to the cocoa powder we know today. From there, we slowly started adding sugar and other ingredients to make chocolate far more palatable. Nowadays, we have all kinds of cacao products that range from skin creams to confections. We have so many things that are chocolate coated that we've lost the plot on where chocolate has come from and how important it is to this day. Chocolate is an art form, and for many, a lifestyle. It's used as a form of decadence and luxury, and as a comfort during the toughest of times. A lot of us have chocolate to thank for being a friend when no one else could be, at the cost of our waistlines. While we have all forms of candies and other items that are classified as chocolate, there are some things to keep in mind, as far as confections go. Chocolate has a couple of groupings, but the three usual categories are based on the amount of actual cacao in the product. To start, we have good old dark chocolate. From baker's chocolate to regular old dark chocolate, this chocolate is around 60% or higher in cacao by volume. Normally you're only adding just cacao and sugar, though sometimes cacao butter is added to mix for a smoother consistency. Aside from, well, the dark color of this product, you may experience a faint nutty aroma from the roasted beans present in dark chocolate. Tasting notes are often fruity, slightly nutty, and noticeably clean on the tongue, indicative of the lack of fat inside of this chocolate product. Milk chocolate is next on the list and is usually set anywhere from 30 to 50% cacao by volume, and is sometimes even lower than that. Unlike dark chocolate, milk chocolate is more processed and is often more sugar and milk than actual chocolate. This chocolate may not even be classified as chocolate depending on the country it's marketed in. Even here in the United States, many things we consider as chocolate have been designated as chocolate candy and not chocolate properly. Seriously, if you ever eaten a Hershey's bar, it's less than 15% chocolate by volume. It's mostly sugar and milk fat. It's really funny, I promise. It's true. Milk chocolate gets its name from the use of milk as a fat compound to cut the cost of cacao solids in the production process. This chocolate is a lot lighter and softer than dark chocolate, and tasting notes can be described as sweet, sugary, and fatty due to the contents of filler inside these types of chocolate. Finally, we have the last classification, white chocolate. While milk and dark chocolate at least have cacao in some form of their composition, white chocolate usually just has cacao butter as the main ingredient. Sugar and milk are also added to make this confection malleable enough to be palatable, while also still retaining some chocolate flavor. You'll notice this chocolate is distinctly pale, sometimes faintly tan, but usually ivory in color. Tasting notes you'll get are sugary, faintly chocolatey, and with a distinctly creamy feel and finish. Zoinks! While there are numerous different chocolate products, these three groups are often the basis for the culinary world. And again, that's not even counting the other uses of cacao in skin and overall natural health. But we aren't here for that now, are we? No, we aren't. We're here to make chocolate in our homes from scratch. That's why you came to me, to learn some history and cook up a storm. So, I say we get to tackling ourselves some delicious chocolate, and discover ourselves along the way. So, as I mentioned before, chocolate has a few components. For our recipe, we only need 2 ingredients, cacao and sugar. An optional third ingredient is cacao butter. Unrefined and specifically food safe. We do not want anything that isn't labeled such because it will hurt you. Don't come crying to me when your chocolate can only go in your hair and your fur. I couldn't source cacao butter at the time of recording, but the beans themselves do have cacao butter in them, so we don't really need this to keep it going. For me, I'm doing the entire process from the pod to the finished product, which takes a long time to do. If you don't feel comfortable doing that, I got you covered later in the video. For the adventurous though, let's begin at, well, the beginning. I have here a cacao pod. It's quite beautiful if I do say so myself. The shell is hard, but not so hard you need tools. But if you want to preserve the pod itself, then you can do what I'm doing and saw into it until you crack the bean open with your hands. Once you open the pod, you'll find a network of seeds covered in a thick, sticky pulp that is quite pleasant in its scent. These are what we'll be using to create our chocolate. Before that though, you may be surprised to know this pulp is actually edible. Giving it a taste, I describe the pulp as sour but pleasantly sweet. A bit floral too, so I describe it as a tart banana with a floral note and fragrance. I hear you can even squeeze this pulp for juice, but for our purposes we won't be doing this. So, here's issue number 1 with making homemade chocolate. No matter how you slice it, fresh beans will need to be fermented. This allows the beans to mature and gain the more pronounced chocolate flavors you're used to in the end product. As such, you can do one of 2 things. You can A. Take the seeds and put them into a vessel and cover them before placing them in a warm spot for a few days. As they age, they will begin to foam and froth and give off a yeasty, almost acid smell. This is quite involved, but it's traditional in its make. If you aren't confident in yourself, like me, you can use option B, a food dehydrator. This to me was far easier and worked well until I encountered the greatest threat of all, human error. But we'll talk about that when we get to it. For this method, you'll line your beans up, pulp and all, along the trays of the dehydrator, keeping them about 1 inch apart or so. From here, you'll place them in your dehydrator and let them set on around 105 degrees Fahrenheit or 40 degrees Celsius for 5 to 10 days. Whatever method you choose, keep an eye on your beans daily as they ferment, and be sure to inspect for any moldy beans. Be sure to toss them if they occur. Luckily though, I didn't have this issue myself. Now while the beans were dehydrating, I felt a nagging feeling telling me to buy some extra beans, just to ensure I had enough for the recipe. If you don't feel comfortable with fermenting your own beans, pre-fermented, unroasted beans are available for purchase online, and this turned out to be my saving grace in this recipe. You'll see why shortly. After a few days in the dehydrator, you should see the beans have lost a decent amount of their moisture, and after 10 days, they've completely desiccated and are ready to be harvested. From here, you'll pluck your beans from whatever method you've chosen and rinse the beans to rid them of the sugary husk that's been left behind. After they're rinsed, give your beans a thorough pat down and make sure they're completely dry and free of moisture for this next step. When the beans are fully dried, preheat your oven to 275 degrees Fahrenheit or 134 degrees Celsius and place them on a baking sheet to roast from anywhere between 25 to 45 minutes. I went with 40 minutes, the logic being the longer you roast your beans, the more the flavor profile of your chocolate changes from fruity and floral to nutty and toasted in flavor. After 40 minutes, here are my beans, and if you take a close look, you can see the difference between my beans and the pre-fermented beans I bought. The beans are a lot darker and are sticking to the baking sheet. That's because I didn't rinse the beans off after fermenting them. They've caramelized due to the sugar from the pulp and are overly roasted. Sadly, I had to dump these, but I had my backup beans ready to go. You can see they're dry and are ready for the process of winnowing, or removing the husk of the beans. Just take each bean and rub it between your fingers until the husk begins to peel and flake away. The resulting bean on the inside is what we want. Tasting it now, it's very bitter, but also quite fruity tasting. I like it. We'll go ahead and winnow the rest of the beans, picking through them to ensure we take as much husk out as possible. When we're finished, the beans we've gathered will be our cacao nibs, meaning we are one step closer to our final product. Now the last step in the process is grinding the beans down. You could do this a couple of different ways, but the way that was most accessible to me was a coffee grinder. I got this one for around $25 and it should serve as a functional grinder. If you have a mortar and pestle or a high-powered blender, you can use that instead. In any case, the first thing you'll need to do is some measuring. Using a scale, weigh out the amount of beans you have. I have 127 grams. You'll want to offset this number with sugar to give your bars a percentage of cacao in the end. I was aiming for around 60 to 70% chocolate, so I weighed about 45 grams of sugar. Somewhere in that range. With all this weighed out, it's time to begin the final steps. Begin by grinding your sugar into a powder. The instructions I followed mentioned that powdered sugar isn't the best idea due to the starch content, so regular granulated sugar will do. Once this is done, set aside your powdery stuff and in batches add your beans. You'll want to grind them up until they become coarse, almost like instant coffee, before pouring this out and processing each batch again until the beans are all roughly chopped. Next, the sugar gets added to the cacao grind and is put back into the processor. Keep a spatula on hand and get back to that grind. What you're looking for is for the grind to turn thick and pasty. The more you process, the harder the blender will work, so give the motor a break every now and again. You'll notice though that the paste will get smoother and eventually even liquefy. The cacao butter in the beans is beginning to work its magic, and when it's about the consistency of peanut butter, scoop the mixture into a heat-proof bowl. This here is chocolate liquor, or an approximation of such. While you're busy processing your beans, get a pot of water heating on the stove. A nice gentle heat. By the time you're done with your chocolate liquor, the water should be hot enough to have steam rising from its surface. With the liquor in a heat-proof bowl, place the bowl over top the pot and begin to stir and fold the mixture as the bowl begins to warm. This double boiler will allow the liquor to be exposed to indirect heat, allowing for better range of warming without burning the precious mixture we've been cultivating for about 10 days or so. You want to stir and fold the liquor non-stop, scraping the sides of the bowl with each pass of your spatula. At first, the mixture will be stiff, but as the heat warms the bowl, you'll find the chocolate liquor growing less and less plastic and more liquid. Soon you'll be able to scoop this stuff with your spatula and it should drip off like, well, melted chocolate. In the final minute or so of your chocolate endeavor, take out whatever molds you'll be using. I have some smaller ones, and when you've got your chocolate into a pourable consistency, go ahead and pour the mix into the molds. Fill the mold as best you can. I'm not too great at it myself. And if you can, smooth the backs with a spatula. With all this done, place the mold into the freezer to chill for around 30 minutes to an hour before taking it out and removing the bars for inspection. My chocolate is a bit uneven, but I had enough for 3 whole bars and some smaller, shallow pieces. The chocolate is smooth for the most part and is pretty dark in color. In tasting, I was pretty damn impressed. I'll let myself in the moment give you my first opinion.
It's fruity, not super sweet, very chocolatey, that's really good. That shit would go really good into cookies. I'll do that shit any day of the week. Any day of the week. That was good.
After a second tasting, I can confirm my thoughts more clearly. The chocolate was a bit grainy since we didn't use a proper wet grinder, but I actually like the texture of the nibs in the chocolate. The chocolate itself was fruity, a bit nutty from the roast, and I had a perfect amount of sugar for dark chocolate. There's a clean feeling after eating it too. No thick coating of fat on the tongue like a milk chocolate bar. This is as clean as it gets, and despite the pain in the ass, I'm gonna do this again, with the real setup next time, I promise. And that's it. It's important to know how big of an impact chocolate has on the world at large. Those that harvest it and whose culture we honor are crucial to understanding how fortunate we are to have a confection that, frankly, was the stuff of royalty at one point. The people that make high-quality chocolate go through a lot of hassle and at a larger scale than what you and I can make in a kitchen. And while I'll surely do this again and maybe even do other types of chocolate, I'll be really appreciative of the time and effort that goes into making at least 1 bar of chocolate, let alone hundreds of thousands. With that, I hope you enjoyed this video as much as I did making it. I could probably do another chocolate video at some point and with a better chocolate setup. Tell you what, if you guys get this video to say 50 likes, I'll make a milk chocolate video. That seems simple enough. And if you get this video to 100 likes, then I'll do a white chocolate video to pair with it. All 3 chocolates with 100 likes. That sounds pretty reasonable to me. Be sure to tell me how I did in the comments, and subscribe if you want to be updated with what I come up with next. I have a lot of stuff planned this year, so be sure to keep an eye on me and my kitchen. Until next time, eat happy and healthy. I'll see you dogs later.